All right, members, we're going to go ahead and take up House Bill 800 at this time. Ms. Lowry, you want to go ahead and read in? We've read it in before, but let's go ahead and read it in again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, Chairman Boyer brings House Bill 800 to provide for calling a convention to fix the time and place for the convention, the delegates of the convention, and relative to a proposed new constitution.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry. Members, we've done a good job, I think, over the last 2 meetings. This is our 3rd meeting receiving public testimony. We have some more public testimony that's going to take place today. We've listened to a lot of the public testimony. We're trying to work with the public and address some of the concerns. We do have an amendment for the bill that's online. We amended the bill previously in committee, and we're going to go ahead and even, I think, make it more solid. I say more solid. We've debated this back and forth, but I think some people will like what they see in this new amendment. So, Ms. Lowry, if you don't mind, and I'm asking I'm calling you Representative Abramson, would you mind coming to the table too? Just Mr. Abramson's been working with me on this bill on behalf of with the transition team, and so to help with some of the questions in case we have regarding the amendment. But Ms. Lowry, please go ahead and read in that amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, the set of the new amendments is 3152. It has been passed out and is available online. It contains 6 amendments. The first amendment deals with the services of judges as delegates not being construed as grounds for recusal. Amendment number 2 is really technical. Amendment number 3 deletes amendment number 2 that was previously adopted at the committee meeting on April the 16th. Amendment number 4 replaces the text of that amendment with a more succinct list. And amendment number 5 expands the ability of the convention to address issues without changing the effect of the Constitution provision to include matters that are duplicative, redundant, outdated, or transitional. Amendment number 6 provides that the Attorney General or her designee shall be the legal advisor to the convention.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry. And look, I'm going to go ahead and touch on this real quick and then turn it over to Mr. Abramson, too. So, you know, a couple of things that, as you all aware, the governor has appointed as judges on his transition team. So in Amendment 1, we address, that's why we're bringing that part of the amendment. Representative Larvadain had some questions, I believe, just regarding the governor being able to appoint himself as a delegate, and I think the amendment number 2 takes care of that. Amendment number 3 deletes what we did last week because this is going to be a more clearer amendment. Amendment number 4, we're being very clear here that we are wanting to leave Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4 intact. So I know a lot of the concerns as they're related to some of the, we had some discussions, about Jim Crow laws, about our rights and whatnot. I think by getting real clear on some of these, it's going to, from a civil rights standpoint, I think this addresses a lot of that because especially in Article 1, it tackles a lot of those things. On Article, in Amendment number 5, there's some provisions in some of these articles that you're going to see are, there's some things that have expired in like 1982 and whatnot that I don't think anybody's going to have any issues with. And then Article number 6, we had testimony last week from the Attorney General's office that we had not included them as part of the legal advisor for us, and so we're addressing that. So. Are there any questions on this amendment before we adopt it? Okay. I'm going to make a motion that... Oh, you do? I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, let's go ahead and Representative... Or I keep calling you Representative Abramson. Mr. Abramson might be able to help out, too. So, Representative Newell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the amendment is affecting the bill, but what effect does it have on this proposal?
Yeah, so, Mr. Abramson, why don't you go ahead and answer that? Let me get you in the mix.
Sure. Neil Abramson, here on behalf of myself and as a representative of the Governor's Transition Council on Constitutional Reform. Representative Newell, the amendments, as Ms. Lowry and the chairman mentioned, try to address some of the questions or concerns that came out of the last meeting. Particularly with respect to Amendment 4, makes clear that this concept is to reorganize or restructure the Constitution, not to change anything, and we can talk more about that, to make crystal clear that the Declaration of Rights, which is in Article 1, and the general framework of government is what's intended to be the Constitution. A lot of the other there will be a lot of discussion of whether other provisions that are now in the Constitution really should be in statute, but we wanted to make very clear that this was not an intent to touch those items that clearly should remain in the Constitution that were discussed at this meeting last week, and that really this committee has the jurisdiction over, which would be the Declaration of Rights, which is Article 1, as well as Articles 2, 3, and 4, which was the main conversation that happened last week. And so Chairman Boyer wanted to put in his bill that is not the intent of the convention to restructure those items out of the Constitution. It is the intent that they will remain in the Constitution, and he wanted to make that very clear by putting that in the bill.
So this proposal that we received a few weeks ago, and I'm speaking about the proposal for reorganization, that proposal had areas in Articles 1, I want to say 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we would have discussions on, and there were parts in each one of those sections of the proposal that either we would not discuss or that there would be discussion on. So is this amendment making basically that proposal for reorganization moot now? So we don't have to, there's no regard, we're not giving any regard to this proposal for reorganization.
Correct. So what had been previously distributed was some initial thoughts about what the discussion would be on Articles 1 through 4, and there were virtually no changes. There was maybe one item subject to discussion in Article 1, and I think there might have been one item subject to discussion in Article 4. They were such minor issues in the Declaration of Rights and the framework of government. It seemed to be simpler just to say, let's just say Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4 are remaining in the Constitution at the intent of the chairman, and we don't even really need to focus on those one or two items that weren't really of monumental impact, and because it is in a section that involves declaration rights and the framework of government, it was easier just to make the collective decision, or the chairman's decision to, let's just say our intent is not to affect those at all.
Okay, that's great, because on this article, on the list of to keep was not Section 3 of Article 1, and I'm going to, in my heart of hearts, say that it was just an oversight. The Section 3 is the right to individual dignity, and that was not on the list of things to keep. It was not on the list of things to move to statute, and it was not on the list of things for discussion. So since this amendment now says we're not affecting these articles, I should not be concerned with the right to individual dignity being addressed at all.
Which particular section?
It's Article 1, Section 3 of the Declaration of Rights of the Constitution. Article 1, Section 3.
It was not in our. It was not in our list outline to move at all.
It wasn't on the one.
You might be suggesting that we missed putting it in anywhere. Correct?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Well,
in my heart of hearts, I want to believe that it was an oversight.
I will tell you, from my perspective, it's an oversight. It's the first time I'm hearing it.
Right.
And so if that It's an. I will speak on the behalf of the rest of the group. It was an oversight. It would have always been designated as remaining in the Constitution. I was not even aware of that until you mentioned it right now. And so,
yeah, let me chime in too, Representative Newell. I caught that earlier, and if you look at the amendment from last week, we addressed it in the amendment before. So this was previously addressed. So just to
Okay, so I'm just making sure that we're not touching these first articles, because on this proposal, we didn't even discuss Chapter 7, which had been a constant conversation as to what we're supposed to be focusing on in this constitutional convention. And that was not on this list of proposals. So I'm just making sure that with this amendment that we are discussing right now, this proposal for reorganization would essentially be a moot document. We will not have to refer to this document at all anymore.
with respect to Article 1, 2, 3, and 4, correct?
Okay. Thank you very much.
thank you, Representative Newell. Representative Larverdale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look at Amendment Number 2. Look at you don't have it. I'm sorry. Look at Amendment Number 2.
I might have an old copy.
Okay. Let me tell you what I'm
go
calling.
ahead.
Amendment Number 2 on page 4, line 3, after governor may insert or appoint a person to. In the original 800, if somebody if in the event of death or inability due to documented illness, the governor may appoint a person to fill that spot. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the conversation we had last week is the issue that the chairman's amendment was intended to address, which is my understanding, interpretation of the bill is if one of the gubernatorial appointees, delegate
sick.
appointees, sick, incapacity, is unable to serve, the governor would nominate or appoint someone else.
And not himself.
You're not himself. Your question was it broad or vague enough where the governor could become a delegate? It was not my understanding, that was never the intent, and so Chairman Boyer is making that very clear with that amendment.
Okay. We want to make sure the governor is not a part of delegate, because I think he'll have too much influence, and I think he has a lot of influence already. And putting him as a delegate will cause some drama, and I want peace.
I think Chairman's Boyer's amendment clarifies that it's not the intent for the governor to be a delegate, but that he can replace one of his delegates who no longer can serve.
When I saw that originally, I was concerned because if we're going to have a document for the people, it has to be of the people, and we can't have undue influence, and we want to make sure that it's a peaceful document. Everybody has input. But if the governor is a part of the team, I'm worried about teacher pay, I'm worried about MFP, I'm worried about some other things, because some members are not going to feel free to vote if the governor's a part of that. So that issue has been eliminated. Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
the chairman's intent with the amendment, and to me, it makes it clear.
That's what I want. I'll ask some more questions on the original bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we're still on the amendment. Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I almost
morning.
want to call you Mr. Rice. So I'm concerned a little bit about the wording of Amendment 4. Excuse me, everyone. Yeah.
If we could get some order in here, please keep it down. Representative Boyd.
Sorry. Thank you. Retaining without affecting the effect of the following. That does not necessarily say you won't rewrite it.
So let me chime in here a little bit too. So let me point to you an example of retaining without effect. If you look, bear with me for a second. So So here's an example of it. So right now, when we're looking at the elections and and this is something I've been working on with staff, as we've gone through this, I'm going to call them technical issues in the existing Constitution when you merge it all. So, and I'll give you an example. I'll give you a couple examples of it. But if we have to make clearer language, we all ears. But I'm trying to make the point that we don't want to change the effect of what the Constitution is doing. In Article 5, which you don't see here today, there's a subsection that I mentioned earlier that expired in 1982. So by removing that, we're not changing the effect of that part of the article. Another item that has not been brought up in the Constitution as it relates to the election, and I'm bringing this up, I'm not sure if no one's ever brought it up. What's that? Yeah, let Ms. Lowry go ahead and address it just so we have the actual technical language here. Ms. Lowry?
So members, dealing with the election of statewide elected officials, in Article 4, Section 3, the Constitution is very clear about the election of the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, treasurer, commissioner of ag, insurance, superintendent of education, if elected, and the commissioner of election also is, if elected, shall be elected for a term of 4 years by the electors of the state at the time and place of voting for members of the legislature. There was, I think, what almost has to be an inadvertent carryover in Article 4, Section 8, which talks about the Attorney General being elected for a term of 4 years at the state general election. That language obviously is not necessary because that is covered by Section 3 of Article 4. So it would be redundant language. But it doesn't change when the election of the Attorney General occurs or the term of office, because that is clearly established in Section 3.
Where's the carryover language?
So if you look at Article 4, Section 3, it talks about the election and term of statewide elected officials. If you look at Article 4, Section 8, it talks about very specifically the Attorney General being elected for a term of 4 years. That is not contained duplicatively in any of the other statewide elected officials' provisions, and is already covered by Article 4, Section 3.
And so back to on Representative Boyd's question. So when we were looking at this, I got with staff and tried to find some language that says, "Hey, look, we want to be able to fix that, but we don't want to have any effect on the articles themselves." So that's why we're using that language. If there's some language you'd prefer to use, I'm all ears. So this is the best language that we could come up with that would still protect the integrity.
I would like to explore some better language because
Okay.
that's one example of something that would be non-detrimental. But if you still look at the language that's there affecting not the effect of the following, something could still be rewritten that you think means the same thing, but we don't. So I do
Okay,
want to explore.
I can see.
Yeah.
I can see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Representative Marcel for a question.
Yes, I'm trying to follow along with amendment number 4, and I think you said that you took out Article 5 because you were not going to change anything in.
No, on Article 5, we actually went round and round with Article 5 as it relates to even the transition documents, and I contemplated bringing something similar on Article 5, but we've been publicly saying that we're going to allow the different committees of jurisdiction to vet this, and so that Article 5 needs to go to the Judiciary Committee. So I'm going to give them the work we've done so that they can see what the draft work that we've done behind the scenes, but I didn't feel comfortable that if we were going to leave items in the judiciary intact, that needs to go to Judiciary Committee where we all agreed that would be vetted, not in House and Governmental Affairs, if that makes sense.
Okay, in Article 4, I think I could barely hear Representative Boyd, but tell me why we're going to retain everything in Article 4, and we're not going to touch that at all?
Correct. Now, look, this is what this committee's about. So if there's some items in Article 4 that, as soon as once this amendment is adopted, we're going to go through some of these amendments one by one and see if there's something that y'all would like to have changed. But at this point, I mean, that's what this amendment is doing, is saying that we're not going to change it.
And finally, amendment number 6. the Attorney General or her designee shall be the legal advisor to the convention. Was that not in your original bill?
It was not. It was an oversight on my part.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Larvadane?
And let me make sure I've got it correct. I'm looking online. Article 1 deals with Declaration of Rights, due process, right to privacy. It goes from Article 1, Section 1 to 27th. We're not going to touch anything in Article 1. Is that correct? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Article 2 is the distribution of powers, 3 branches of government, Section 1 and 2. We're not going to touch that.
That's correct.
Okay. Article 3, legislative branch, that's Section 1 through Section 20. We're not going to touch that.
That's correct.
Article 4, that's executive branch. That's with the governor, Section 1 through 22. We're not going to touch that.
That's correct.
But we will deal with judicial branch.
Which is Article 5?
Article 5 is judicial branch, and we will deal with Article 6, local government. Is that correct? And all the other areas.
We haven't gotten to the other areas, so.
Okay. Let me tell you the confusion we have.
Well,
We keep saying that we're going to.
I just don't want my comments to be taken out of context.
Okay.
The idea is for each committee by subject matter jurisdiction to review the proposal for the article that fits within their jurisdiction. We just talked about Article 5, the judiciary. And this committee generally deals with Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4, so that's why the chairman is putting in an amendment in this committee at this time, because that kind of falls within this committee. It doesn't mean that the other articles, that there will be any reorganization or not. That is still subject to discussion and debate by those particular committees. So I just want to make sure that I was clear on that, because I don't want it to suggest that that means other things will change or won't change or whatever. And by the way, I hate to use the word change, because what we're talking about is reorganization. The idea is that not a word will change in the Constitution. It will just be reorganized, whether it should remain in the Constitution or go to a transitional section, subject to perhaps moving the statute with a 2/3 vote change instead. So anyway, Representative Larvadane just kind of wanted to clarify that.
Okay, because let me tell you, with having the longest Constitution, we need to know exactly what areas going where, what committees. I know if we're going to deal with the taxing authority, we're dealing with Ways and Means. If we're going to deal with health and welfare issues, it will go to the Health Committee. That's what we've been trying to get a grasp. This is just on the amendments, but later on, I'd like to know exactly what areas will we be dealing with in House and Government. Because once we vote this in, if we vote it out, which should probably get out, will we be hearing issues in regards to the Constitution or not, or just once it leaves us, it'll go in other committees and won't come back to us?
I defer to the chairman and or the speaker or the clerk on that. I wouldn't want to weigh in on that, because that's not my decision.
I'll ask you something later. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Larvadane. Representative Newell?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. The amendment number 6 that Rep. Larvadane just brought up, can we revisit that? Because this calls for the Attorney General or her designee to be the legal advisor to the convention. What if hopefully we're sued if this passes? Would that not be a conflict if she had input on advising us and then is also the person who is defending this? Because she's going to have to defend it if and when this is sued. We're sued about this. Maybe we should have somebody else appointed as the attorney for the convention.
Not prepared to give you a legal opinion on that.
I didn't ask for a legal opinion.
But I would tell you, Ms. Lowry can jump in. I seem to recall that was a standard provision in the constitutional convention bills that we always had. It just was omitted from this one, but Ms. Lowry can
And
jump
none of
in
them
and-
constitutional
Yep.
conventions passed except the one in 72, and all of those delegates were
That's not accurate.
elected.
That's not accurate. We
But
passed it.
those people were elected
Gotcha.
from
So-
the public and not us.
So to your question, we actually, and Ms. Lowry can chime in if she liked, but we've specifically asked the Attorney General if there would be any kind of conflict. They ran it through their chains, and the answer is no, there would be no conflict. Ms. Lowry, do you have anything to add to that?
Mr. Chairman, I can only add that the Attorney General acts as the legal advisor to several state agencies and also is required by law to attend the legislature during its session to give aid and advice relative to arrangement and preparation of acts and documents, and obviously does defend those acts and actions in court when required.
I just see where this probably could be some kind of complications or some type of conflict, since we are being put in a different position than the one we're normally operating in. Because none of us ran on a ballot that, oh, I'm going to be a delegate to the Constitutional Convention. And normally the Attorney General does oversee the work that we do and does defend us as a legislative body when the legislature is sued. I'm just looking at the new position and role that we'll be in as delegates to this constitutional convention, which is a little bit different animal of our normal everyday operations here. That's just my thought patterns on this and my concern.
All right. Thank you, Representative Newell. Look, point just for the public, Committee Room 3 has been set up as an overflow room, so if anybody's listening or anybody leaves and loses a seat, Committee Room 3, we do have some empty seats, but Committee Room 3 is set up as an overflow room. All right, Representative Boyd?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, one more time, because Rep. Larverdane, I know that we believe that that's the intent, that nothing will change in Article 1, 2, and 3, and 4. It does not read that way, though. So I know that the intent, I get that that's the intent, that nothing will change, but I need the public to understand that that's not how this reads right now.
All right. Thank you, Representative Boyd. All right. The board is clear as far as questions. I'm going to make a motion that we adopt Amendment Set 3152. Is there any objection? All right. Seeing no objection, Amendment Set 3152 has been adopted. All right. Now we're back on the bill. So, any questions on the bill as it stands now? Okay, Representative Newell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, former Representative Abrams. Again, as I stated before, I'm not in opposition of having a constitutional convention. In committees in past, I have supported representatives that brought up the issue. The focus group, as Ms. Lowry so gently corrected me last week, I was on that. I thought it was a great thing that we need to revisit. Things in the society has changed, and I believe that the Constitution needs to be reflective of some of those changes, but so that it can last for a long period of time. My concern, and I'm going to keep saying it, is the time frame in which we are supposed to do this work. I believe you were asked, Rep. Abrams, if we had looked at any of the other chapters, and you said y'all hadn't focused on that yet. And I think this has been in discussion since October of last year, when our governor won that this was an issue. And if you all haven't combed through the front page to the back page of this Constitution to see what it is that we want to change, how could we possibly, in 4 or 5 weeks, figure out what we want to move where and be able to really digest the effects of moving something protected by the Constitution to something that'll have loose protections in a super statute. And again, my concern is the timing of it and the time that we're limited to in making these sites and decisions. And again, and also having us as delegates. I have issues with that. The former delegates were elected from the public, from the House districts. There's going to be too much outside pressure and influence on people who are concerned with minor things, and I'm saying minor as it relates to the Constitution. They're going to be moved and worried about protecting those things instead of having a clear focus on the Constitutional Convention. There's pressures from the fourth floor. There's pressures from advocacy groups. There's pressures from our constituents, and we should not have those pressures in the back of our minds while we're considering constitutional protections of the people that we were elected to represent. I believe it should be a separate body of 105, and I believe that we should not have this. That's my first issue. Second issue, where are we having this? We sure can't convene in the chambers if it's a body of 171 people. Where are we going to go? I was told of where the last convention met. It was under a building somewhere. I don't even know if that still exists. So where will we be? How is this going to look? What is the overtime and the stress on our staff going to look like? We just put in the rules that we can't have a 24-hour turnaround on bills because we were overworking our staff. So we changed it to 72. But now what is that turnover going to look like? What is that workload going to look like for our staff? We can't get Senate staff to come and fill in the work for our House members because their procedures are different. We can't get House to go to Senate for the same reason. We can't train outside people to come in and fill in for our staff because I don't know what other body does what our staff does so flawlessly and effortlessly. What are we going to do when there's an amendment? Are we pulling staff from somewhere else from the work that they need to do when they're closing out the books at the end of the day to come and do an amendment for us while we're in this constitutional convention? What is this going to look like? What's the hours of overtime? How much overtime? Somebody's got to pay for that. And someone said about an outside source. I have issues with that. An outside source coming in to pay for and cover the costs of this constitutional convention. And I've made these points the last two times we had it. I still don't have an answer as to what this is going to look like. I know in the 72 convention, those delegates wrote the rules themselves. Who's writing these rules for us? Because I don't think any of us is going to have the bandwidth after coming through committee and sitting on the floor to write rules as to how this constitutional convention is going to go. Because I haven't seen rules yet. We keep saying that this is going to the committees. If we're still in session, y'all gonna work the devil out of us if we have to go from this committee hearing with the 1,000 bills that we already have and then go to a committee hearing to figure out where we moving stuff from Constitution to super statute. I have a list of concerns, and the big bucks they paying us don't cover what I'm doing now. So it's damn sure not gonna cover the extra work that we're about to put on each other. Constitutional convention, yes, it is needed. In this short time frame, without having all of these concerns that I and other representatives have, that's a big concern for me. And I'll yield to somebody else, and I'll press my button.
Thank you, Representative Marcel.
I'm Newell.
Excuse me, Representative Newell. Representative Marcel.
Okay, Newell, Marcel, I know that's, close. And we're going to have some similar comments. My first question to you would be the transition team. There has to be some framework in place already that you all are considering doing in this constitutional convention, because if it's not, then we're certainly not going to have enough time to get this work done. And so what are those areas that you all are, because when you came to the table the first time, y'all said y'all didn't have that information ready. So what are those areas that you are looking, that you know that the transition team already knows that they want to focus on? What is that?
And let me clarify, both Representative Marcel and Representative Newell, if I wasn't clear or whoever else was presenting with me last time wasn't clear, the transition team has been looking at this since last fall. We have gone through every article. We have spent a lot of time on it. All that work has been done by the Transition Council, with the idea that each committee will review each particular article. This is where we've started. We haven't gotten further than that, so we have now covered Article 1, 2, 3, and 4. When we get to 5, when we get to 5 in judiciary,
you say you have not.
We have not gone to judiciary yet and have a conversation with them about 5. We have not gone to education perhaps and have a conversation about Article 8. We have not gone to either Ways and Means or Appropriations and have a conversation about Article 7 or 6, but that will be happening. And let me say that the idea is, like we've had the conversation already with you, which is the conversation is, I don't want to say it's simple because it's very important, but the process is a lot simpler than it sounds, which is, should the provisions in Article 1, for example, remain in the Constitution, or should they be restructured and moved to the transition area where it might end up in statute? That is the conversation, and we have already had the conversation now with HGA that nothing in Article 1 is changing. We have now had that conversation about Article 2, which is HGA, which is nothing is going to be restructured out of the Constitution. We've had that conversation now with HGA about Article 3 and Article 4. So you can see that it is a conversation that can be had. It's a conversation that can be efficient and effective. When we get to judiciary, we'll be focused on 5, and we'll have the conversation about what should remain in and what maybe should be restructured to a transition, not changing anything, just moving it from one section to another. And so these conversations can be had. They can be had effectively and efficiently because we've already shown that we've done that here for the first 4. And so that is the concept.
Okay, so let me ask it a different way. The intent language in this bill, could it supersede the language in Article 13, Section 2 of the Louisiana Constitution? And let me say this, particularly the second sentence, which says, the revision or the proposed Constitution and any alternative propositions agreed upon by the convention shall be submitted to the people for their ratification or rejection, particularly as it relates to that. Anything adopted by this convention goes to a vote of the people. So it doesn't matter what the intent of the bill really says. The members of the convention do not have to limit their work to the confines of HB 800. Is that accurate?
As I was answering questions from Judge last time, Judge Carter, we had the lawyer debate. We had the constitutional debate as to whether or not House Bill 800 could restrict the convention work, or whether or not once you get to a convention, it opens it up where they could do something outside of the bounds of HB 800.
That's my question.
That's your question. I will tell you that there are different legal opinions on both sides of that issue. I don't pretend to be the arbiter of who's right and who's wrong, because my answer is this: the intent is not to go beyond House Bill 800. The intent is not to change anything, just to restructure anything. But I am committed, and I think I can't speak for others, but I feel comfortable that the others that are working on this project are committed to ensuring that the convention does not go beyond our intended purpose.
But you do understand that is a concern, a real concern from the people, right? Who have the opportunity to.
I understand the comment. I definitely understand
to
the
ratify
comment.
or reject it, right?
and I will do my part as much as I can to make sure that it doesn't go beyond what we're trying to do.
And so following up on my lead counsel, Newell, I'll follow up on the lead counsel. It's not that I'm going to speak for myself, that I or some people in the legislature don't agree that this needs to be done. The question becomes some of the secrecy behind what has already been discussed, that we don't have that information, right? So we're not privileged to whatever information the transition team is intending to do. We don't know what that is, and it sounds like y'all don't really know either at this point on everything, because what I'm hearing is we're going to take it from the subject matters to the different committees. And that concerns me because when you all came here before, I asked, would this interrupt in any way the process that the people sent us to do, right? The actual bills that they sent us here to pass, and before anyone knew anything about a constitutional convention or that it was going to be proposed, many of the legislators here, whether you agree with their legislation or not, worked to bring legislation that was a constitutional amendment. And what happened in this committee after you guys left was we said, we don't want to touch that. We don't want to touch anything that has a constitutional amendment. And so that, to me, stops the work of the people that they sent us here to do, because we don't know whether there's going to be a constitutional convention or not. And so in my opinion, when I asked that originally, they said, no, we're not going to stop or interfere with any of the work. But that's not true. If we sat in this committee and made decisions not to pass anything that had a constitutional amendment with the idea that we're going to get a constitutional convention and we don't want to move anything until we get with the transition team. So that was one of my questions, if you remember.
No, I understand. And with respect to HB 800 and the idea of the convention, which is the only thing that I can speak to.
Okay.
The idea is that the convention and the work on HB 800 would be as efficient and as effective as it could be, so it would not interrupt your other work. Our plans are not.
I just don't see how that's possible.
I understand. Our intent in the way HB 800 is written is not to ask the legislature to sine die early. It is to try to do this along with the contemporaneous work of the legislature, and then the convention would be contemporaneous with the end of the session. And I will say that I'm hopeful and thoughtful and thinking that what we just did in this committee with Article 1, 2, 3, and 4 was not too disruptive, that we have had some long hearings and debates, but we have already covered Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4 through this committee's work, and I appreciate your time on that. And so we have kind of already check those boxes. And so the idea of the process would be the same for the other committees, that we would take a little bit of their time during one of their normal committee meetings, but it would not be disruptive of the rest of your work where you couldn't get to the rest of it, which I don't think we've done for this committee. And we've been able to do it together at the same time.
And your thought process about us handling 1, 2, 3, and 4, we did not go through each one of those articles. Let's be clear. So what we said was, what you all said was, we're not going to include those. We're not going to touch those. So I don't know how that's work on those, because there may be some people that feel like you should move something in one of those. But the objective of the author of the bill and you all who are presenting this bill said we're not going to touch Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's not really a hearing on those. That's us accepting what our chairman has said he's not going to do. So that's a little.
Well, I would say we were receptive to Representative Lauerdane's comments at the last hearing, which caused some of these
about the governor not being appointing himself.
No, some of his other comments about judges and we also had some comments about rights, and so I think Chairman Boyer's amendment number 4 was in an effort to address the comments from this committee, including Representative Laurdane, about removing any discussion of restructuring Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4.
And I'll make my final.
And also part of 5, but we're going to defer that to the Judiciary Committee.
Okay. And my final comment will be this. if you all have been working on this since last fall, right? And you all have expertise the transition team. And so you've had an opportunity, and it's a lot of work. Would you agree?
I've been working on this since 2009.
Okay, since 2009. So if you all been working on it since 2009, well, you yourself and plus the transition team, then how is it that you all want the members of this body to go into a convention where we have not had a road show, the public has not had any input on this other than the 3 meetings that we've had? They may be able to come here, may not. How is it that we want to rush a constitutional convention down the throats of the people of Louisiana without their input when you yourself say you've been working on it since 2009, and we're going to do it in what, 5 weeks?
Because you have to understand what we're doing. We are not redrafting. We are not changing a word.
Doesn't matter. You've been working on it. You couldn't do it in 5 weeks. You couldn't even redraft it in 5 weeks, correct?
No, well, I've been working on trying to get us to a convention since 2009 because
I remember when you were here.
And people were working on it before me. This goes back to my information is 2002. Even as late as 2018, I had a bill that came out of, I had HB 500 that came out of HGA without objection and went to the House floor. There was a vote on it, debate on it, had 52 votes, almost a majority. It requires a 2/3 vote. But these conversations have been happening, and I realize that maybe not with everybody here. But
right, I'm not suggesting.
These conversations, including public comment and hearings, have been going on for a very long time. This is not a new thing. It's not a new concept.
It's not. I'm just.
I filed a bill every year for 11 of the 12 years I was here. We voted on it on the House floor in 2018. But this is a much simpler process. It's just a restructuring. It's not a redrafting.
I got it. But there's at least 4 new members on this
I understand.
dais, right? So there are a lot of new members that have not heard anything about the Constitutional Convention, doesn't understand the Constitution. So if we don't know what's going on, the general public, I guess you can understand the angst in the public that we did not do a road show. When we do something of this magnitude, I think we need to include the public to get public input in it and not do it. So I'm trying to figure out, if we hadn't done it this long time, what is the rush? Why not go through this process the way we go through other processes when we're changing? And you keep saying we're not changing, we're altering, but we're moving it. When you move something, guess what that is? A change.
I don't disagree with that, but these conversations have been going on for a long time. Keep in mind, and I know you know this, that the public is the ultimate decision maker. This has to go to the ballot. The public has to approve it. If the public doesn't approve it, none of it happens.
And the question becomes with that, what's the framework going to look like around putting that on the ballot? And who's going to spend the money to put the commercials on the air to push it? All of that plays a role in whether or not this gets passed or not. You and I both been in politics long enough to know who has the money to spend can probably change and sway, put it on there in a way that people doesn't quite understand all of it, and they're going to vote for it if that's where the money's been spent, or against it. I'm not saying either way. I don't think it should be swayed in either manner. I'm just saying that we need to make sure of who's putting money into this Constitutional Convention. I would have to agree with my lead counsel on that. And we need to know what's going on. There's not a lot of transparency as I see it, and I'll stop at that.
And I understand, Representative Marcel, and I can say that I've been enjoying my time being on this side of the table instead of up there. At least for my role in this, I brought the bills when there was a Republican governor. I brought the bills when there was a Democrat governor. I brought the bills when it was more Democrats on both chambers, when there have been more Republicans in both chambers. And I think we all agree that the system needs to be worked on and fixed. I realize that the concern is always timing.
Correct.
Is this the right time? as I said, worked on this with every type of legislature and every type of governor, and it doesn't, I wouldn't say it doesn't ever appear to be the right time, but I think we all recognize that there's a problem, and at some point it would be helpful to address it.
All right, but I've not seen a road show as it relates to this, and I would like to see one. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Marcel. So members, just kind of a heads up. So we go on the floor at 1. Just let's keep our questions precise, and we have testimony that we want to receive, some more testimony from the public that we'd like to receive. So Representative Weibel. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. He seems to often make those remarks before he calls on me. That's how I knew I was next. Representative Aberson, I appreciate, well, former, but old habits are hard to break. I appreciate your patience and to Rep. Marcel's point, just trying to understand the process and all. So change is change, but we're essentially restructuring. There are parts and pieces of the current Constitution that we, in this process, will make a collective decision. Do we move those into statute? Is that essentially it?
Correct. The idea is not to change a word, but just to restructure. Right. There are many provisions now that are in the Constitution that really are statutory in nature, and the idea is to create a Constitution that is the format of what a Constitution should be, to make government work more efficient for the people of Louisiana.
Right. And so, I keep hearing about the time frame, but effectively what's happening is multiple committees, both here, the Senate, potentially, I guess with the governor's delegates, are addressing different pieces of the Constitution as appropriate to those committees. Is that's
correct. So it will be broken up so that it doesn't fall only on a small group or one group. And so each committee, like this committee did on Articles 1 through 4, and our Articles 1 through 4 may be the easiest, but the idea is the same. And also the idea is we're not changing the language. We're just having the discussion about whether something should remain in the Constitution or be in a transition section, perhaps to a statute that would require a 2/3 vote to change instead. So that's the conversation. Right. Remaining in the Constitution or transitioning.
And the same concept, I'm assuming, applies to all of the who knows how many amendments we have on this Constitution. Do we look at all of those amendments as well by subject matter and according?
Correct, because they have now all been incorporated into the Constitution, so they are now integrated into their respective articles. So
through those articles, we'll address those. Thank you for that clarification. So what happens to, we move whatever piece and we approve it and the governor's delegates approve it, but the Senate does not. Is there then a conference committee process to work through those differences, or do they not? Does it just not advance?
And someone asked about how this would work, and you've kind of answered the question by talking about it. So there will be 3 groups. There's the House delegates, there's the Senate delegates, and there's the gubernatorial appointed delegates. While we will meet together and have deliberations together, in order to pass any new instrument which would go to a vote of the people would require a favorable vote of all 3 independently. So the House would have to vote separately to approve it, the Senate and the governor's appointees. If any of those groups don't vote to approve it, then nothing comes out of the convention. If there's a disagreement among them, I don't think we've formally set up what process would resolve the differences, but they would have to be a process to resolve the differences where each of the 3 entities voting separately would have to approve separately the same instrument.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I just want to add to, we all have different perspectives. I seem to recall in the gubernatorial race, every major candidate but one talking about wanting a constitutional convention. I personally don't understand the idea that this is some new concept. I started doing work on different issues far back as the Foster administration. And as far back as I can remember, there's always been conversations around this building about we need change. And I know for my race, and I was so focused on my own race in the fall as a first-time legislator, I actually campaigned on this issue. I campaigned on the fact that for generations, we have failed our citizens. We have failed, particularly our children and our students, because of the lack of economic opportunity, the lack of a government that works for us and against us. And all of that goes back to structural reform. So I feel very comfortable sitting up here, being a voice for my district, being a voice for a state that I was born and raised in, that two of my 3 adult children have left, that we can't get to where we need to be unless we're willing to be bold. So I don't understand the idea that this is a new concept. I applaud the governor's effort. I'm certainly not surprised by it. I'm apprehensive a little bit, but I mean, these are major structural changes, but they're necessary, and I appreciate, again, you being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Weibel. Representative Boyd?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't believe that anyone that's been around and pays attention to politics believes that this is a new concept. I think everybody has talked about constitutional reform. We all have. We all believe that something has to be done. The problem that I'm seeing and having is the way about which we're trying to get there. We've been in office less than 6 months. We could have road shows, town hall meetings to further involve the public, to involve the citizens of this state that will be affected by what we're doing here. You yourself references your 2018 bill, where in your bill you had elected, delegates would be elected, right?
I did, so
Okay,
but I will tell you that
I'm just making a point right now.
Okay.
Your bill said elected.
it did.
You had 117 delegates. You were limiting your bill to Articles 6, 7, 8, 10, and I think 12, if I remember correctly. I don't think anyone is against reform. We all need it. But just like we did with the redistricting, we took our time. We had town hall road shows with people in our districts to get their input. There's time. I think what everyone is uneasy with is not the concept of it being new, it's how fast it's going. Simply put, we could take, even with the structure what it is right now, have the legislatures and the 9 legislatures and the 27 appointed delegates meet, do road shows, get more information. By March 1st of next year, we could be ready and set to go with it. It's the rushing of it, the wording of some of it, to me is a play on words, what makes people uncomfortable. Do we even know what subject committees that the 27 delegates will be on? Do we know that yet?
And when we're talking about the subject matter committees, we're talking about the current legislative committees.
So that doesn't involve the 27 delegates at all?
No, I think our role would be like what I'm doing here, sitting here, going over what the particular article is that's for that particular subject matter jurisdiction, and kind of having the conversation with the members along with the public input as to what, for example, Article 5 should be restructured to look like. So it will be controlled and directed by the committee members with
so that means
input
that
from
they
the
would be assigned to subject committees, though, correct?
That's my understanding is how the Speaker and the President would like to do it.
Okay,
Correct.
do we know who will be assigned where yet?
I would defer that to the Speaker and the President.
Which probably means not. I think, again, the issue is, why are we moving this so fast? And regardless of whether or not elected officials understand what constitutional convention is, I'm finding that some of the public has no idea what that means. even that language. Because we're not saying constitutional reform, we're saying convention. Most of the public, the general public, that are not elected officials and have not been involved in politics for years, have no idea what that really means. So then, when it is on the ballot, they probably will have no idea what they're even supposed to be voting on. What will be the messaging? The messaging so far has not been great. So it's not that most of my colleagues that I've spoke with are against constitutional reform. It's the speed in which we're moving. We can't even keep our districts and the people in our districts up to date on anything because we're not given enough information. They have no input on their feelings on it, or the things that they would like to have addressed. So I don't want anyone leaving here thinking that somebody up here thinks this is new. We don't believe that. Most of my colleagues actually support reform, but there's a matter in which to get there. Even your way when you did it was different than what we're doing right now.
It was, and I ran into a lot of concerns about having elections. The concerns were that the elections can be controlled by outside influences, third-party money, and the people who might be elected would be representative of some sort of outside interest as opposed to the people. Everybody has a different opinion as to how it should be done and how it should work, all of which raise concerns. At the end of the day...
And you know what the concern is right now? Who's controlling the delegates now?
Well,
the appointed delegates. It works both ways, but at least when you're elected, the public is also making their point heard.
I will say there's probably no perfect solution because everybody has a difference of opinion. I think the one thing that we all agree on is we need reform. I know there's always a difference of opinion as to how we get there and when the best time is to get there. I'm just a believer that it's the sooner
Mr. Weiser, I agree with you. Everyone has a difference of opinion.
But let's let Representative Boyd, let's let him finish his thought just before we get to the next question.
My thought.
Okay. I'm just a believer that the sooner we can get there, the better. And I mean, I started in 2009, and I wish we could have done it then.
That's not addressing what I'm saying, though, Mr.
I understand.
What I'm saying is that you're right. Everyone has a difference of opinion, but we were elected to represent the opinion of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Representative Boyd. Representative Bam?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Abramson, there had been talk of doing a constitutional convention back even when the fourth term of Edwin Edwards, correct?
I know the conversation existed before me. All I can talk about is when I started, which was 2009.
Now, as a former legislator, you could appreciate one of my big concerns, which has been echoed by some of my colleagues on this committee, and that is there going to be enough time in the last 2 weeks of this legislative session to divide between fulfilling our duties as state representatives and to make these revisions, proposed revisions, in the form of a convention, in your opinion?
I do, because we have very narrowly tailored our objective, which is not to redraft the Constitution, not to change anything, but just to reorganize it. And I believe there is sufficient time to do that process.
Now, one of the things that the sense of urgency that's been communicated to us has been trying to ensure that the maximum number of the share of the electorate has a voice in the adoption or rejection of this document. Now, we have, over the next 3 years, we have a presidential election this year. To my knowledge, they don't have a statewide election in 2025 unless we put an amendment on the ballot. So there's not an actual an election statewide. And then in 2026, we have a U.S. Senate election. Now, we're trying to get this done in order to prepare ourselves for some of the big things coming around the corner, not down the road, but around the corner. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So, again, since don't think it's new, and what we're trying to do is be very streamlined in what we're trying to accomplish, even though it's very important, and we need to make sure that we do it right. From a timing standpoint, the election at the end of this year will provide the greater opportunity. It's usually the highest turnout election and it provides the greatest opportunity for community input because their vote counts. And so the idea is to put it on the ballot in the fall with the presidential election, which is usually the highest turnout, so everybody has a say in this document. There is no statewide election in 2025. The next statewide election would be in 2026. So to get to this reform process would be delayed in at least 2 years. And what's facing this body next year is projected to be at least a minimum, from what I'm hearing, of a $500 million budget shortfall. And what I mentioned to the committee last year, the reason I engaged in this back in 2009, because we had shortfalls back then, and the pain that we all had on where the cuts had to come from, which was primarily higher ed and education, because the way
Healthcare.
What I say? Healthcare and higher education, because of the way the structure of our government is set up. Those were the two main areas where you principally could only cut. And that actually is what led me to start this process, so that when the state got back to that issue, that the legislature and the governor had other options. Don't know what you may ultimately decide to do, but at least you would have other options, and you could have conversations about doing something different than what you might be forced to do because of the way this document is currently framed. And so, to your point, is from a timing standpoint, the idea is highest vote turnout is this fall. We could not come back to this for another 2 years, and yet next session you're going to be facing those decisions, which we hope we could provide you with an opportunity to have a broader discussion on, rather than very limited conversations and basically run in a circle like we did when we faced those budget deficits.
Continuing, Representative Marcel had brought up concerns about the money that would be used to either promote or oppose this. Don't our existing election laws and our ethics code provide mandatory disclosures of spending and raising for propositions that are on the ballot?
I might defer that one to Ms. Lowry. I think you're correct, Representative Bainham, but you kind of getting...
Representative Bayham.
Bear with me. I'm trying to add y'all both on here. I think we got you. There you go.
Contributions and expenditures on ballot propositions, whatever they may be, are required to be disclosed under the Campaign Finance Disclosure Act.
So the public will be able to see who's trying to influence this election one way or the other, correct?
Certainly, as far as those ballot propositions and support or opposition of those ballot propositions.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry. Always a font of knowledge. Let's see.
Would you speak up a little bit, or speak into the mic? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Let me just close with this. I've felt that we've needed to engage in meaningful constitutional reform for decades. What was built in the 70s doesn't work anymore here than a piece of electronics built in the 70s, especially with the new challenges we have in Louisiana. I do have a lot of reservations about the process. I do have some reservations about our ability to do our constitutional duties as legislators, as there will be some loss of time for us to do our duties. And I do believe that at the end of the day, the public will judge us, not just on a document, but the process that was utilized to produce this document. However, I do believe that after so many attempted bites at the apple, if you will, of trying to develop a constitution, we finally have something that seems to be able to go to a point where it can be created and actually put before the voters. I do believe this bill deserves to have a vote on the House where we have not just this committee, but the entire 105 members of the House of Representatives. They have a voice on this and bring their ideas both for and against. And I appreciate your work on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bayham. We're going to go to Representative Larverdane, then we're going to take some public input. Representative Larverdane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rep. Abramson, you have a copy of this in front of you? Pull it out because I'm going to ask some questions about that. 800, the bill. I'm going to go over a few topics real quick. You have it in front? Look at on page 1, line 8. When we go back in the Constitutional Convention, are we going to go back into criminal penalties? Are we going to look at criminal law because we just dealt with moving into the criminal crime section? Are we going to go back into that, or do you know? Or you don't know at this point?
Again, we're not going to change anything. So the idea is that nothing is going to be changed. It may be reorganized, and without knowing specifically what provision you're talking about in the Constitution, I can tell you if it's in Articles 1, 2, 3, or 4. The answer is no.
Okay.
If your concerns about whether something in the other articles might be reorganized, not going to be changed, reorganized, then I guess it's possible because we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay. Let's look at page 6, line 9. Page 6, line 9, and I'm going to say something. I'm going to ask you some questions. Currently, in the House committees, we have 16 committees, starting from criminal justice all the way to Ways and Means. We only have one African American who chairs health and welfare, and we have a few people who are vice chair of committees. I'm concerned that when you look at line 9, when you look at the number of chairmen and the vice chairman, and any such office are deemed necessary, I'm trying to figure out what is our scope to make sure you have diversity, because if you move issues to Ways and Means, you don't have a minority chairman. You move issues to other committees, you don't have minority chairpersons. With African Americans, a third of the population, with the way this is structured, you're not going to have enough input, and you're not going to have African Americans in these leadership positions to help set policies. Because I can show you, these are the committees in the House. We got one African American that chairs health and welfare. I'm concerned about us sending stuff to committees when we don't have fair diversity in these committees. And I hate to put you on this spot because I've worked with you well through your history. But commerce, no African American chair. Transportation, no African American chair. Education, no African American chair. Criminal justice, no African American chair. I'm trying to figure out how we're going to adequately get something done, but you don't have enough diversity in leadership to make it fair to everybody. You can't answer that question because it's too loaded. So I'm not going to let you. You're not going to answer that question. It's too loaded. It's too loaded. Look at page 7, line 26, 27, 28. Okay. It reads. 26, the Executive Committee may create and establish substantive procedural committees as it deems appropriate. Even if you create substantive and procedural committees, it won't be done in a fair and equitable manner because it's not done in the House currently. So don't answer it because you can't. Let's look at page 8. And this the shit that really scares me. This is the page 8 scares me. Look at G. Line 12. The convention shall have full authority to accept grants, monies, aids, facilities, and services from public and private sources for the purpose of accomplishing its task of framing a new constitution. What scares me is that we're going to bring in private dollars, and private dollars are going to control the whole operation, and the people will have no input because the people are not going to have the money to get the influence that they need. this whole document scares the hell out of me because you're going to have folks with so much power and influence, they're not going to have a chance at the seat, at the table. I'm not through. I got some more stuff for you. Are we going to, the session starts on May the 20th, and we're going to be here to July 15th? July 3rd.
The concept is June 3rd.
June 3rd, okay.
Yeah, let Mr. Abramson answers on the record on the mic so where people can hear.
So everybody who's watching, including legislators and legislative families, June 3rd.
3rd, okay. Now, with what I said, can you find a way to bring it back to the governor that the way this is set up is not going to be fair to African Americans? When you look at, I'm going to send this to this committee, we don't have enough leadership in these committees to be fair to everybody. There are 4.6 million people in this state, 1.6 million African Americans, but we're not in leadership positions to do a lot. So when these committees are created, you're excluding a lot of people in our community. So when you talk to the governor's team and the transition team, they're going to have to make a better situation better. They've got to get more inclusion. They've got to be fair to the people. And having a third party putting money out scares me because regular people won't have an opportunity to be heard. They're going to be ignored. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Larverdale. Representative Boyd for another question. Representative Boyd, hold on, give me 2 seconds. There we go.
So I want to go back to the saying that we're not changing anything. We're reorganizing. Would you agree that depending on punctuation, you can change the meaning of something?
Yes, because I made a comma amendment in my first term in House Judiciary, and former Congressman Richmond was the chairman, and he got a few chuckles out of that, but I thought it was very important.
Yeah. So in reorganizing, something as simple as changing the punctuation of a sentence can change the meaning of it. That is what concerns me, because that is change. So when you're reorganizing, you're subject to changing the punctuation of things. Am I making any sense with that?
We won't be changing any punctuation. We won't be changing any words.
If you're reorganizing, you're going to move full sentences?
We will be moving full, well, I don't know if it's...
Exactly. We don't know. That's the truth. We don't know.
That's what the conversation is about, because this isn't a one-man show. It's a collaborative effort. So I can't answer your question because I don't know the answer because I'm only one person.
My point is, none of us know until we actually see it.
No, that's right.
How it will change.
And
that is what bothers people.
And
the fact that something small as saying, I like, marketing, so I like marketing, is two different things.
But the idea is not to change the punctuation, that it's a restructuring. And it's a collaborative effort that requires
and what to you
everybody...
is restructuring then? Because maybe I don't understand that.
Restructuring means if there's a provision in the Constitution that is really statutory in nature. For example, there may be, hypothetically, if someone wanted to create a commission of people to discuss about their neighborhood, and they put it in the Constitution. The question is, should a homeowners association in my area in New Orleans be in the Constitution? And if it currently is, the conversation would be, should we take the homeowners association out of the Constitution and put it in a statute? Because we wouldn't be changing it. I still have my homeowners association. It would be set up the exact same way. We'd just be taking it out of the Constitution and putting it in a statute because it may not be worthy of being in the Constitution, but it's worthy of being in law, so we're going to put it in a statute.
And that is change. Thank you, Mr. Abramson.
Thank you, Representative Newell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to be brief because I want to hear from the public. But former Rep. Abramson, you said the word collaboration, and you're just one person. I haven't been collaborated with. these hearings, these 3 hearings, is the first time we, as the elected people, have had an input on making any changes to the proposal to having the Constitutional Convention. We had collaboration during redistricting when the whole House and Governmental and Senate and Governmental Affairs went around the state to talk to the residents in all of the districts and let them know what we were doing and listening to the concerns that they had as what they wanted the congressional, House, Senate, and judicial maps to look like. That was collaboration. Your HB 500, that drafted collaboration because there was appointments, and your bill provided for appointments from PAR, the Budget Project, LAB, the National Federation of Independent Business, AFL-CIO, the NAACP, the Assessors Association, the Sheriffs, the Clerks of Court Association. That's collaboration. The Municipal Association, police jurors, the Law Institute. Your bill from 500 even allowed for personnel from the 4 law schools across this state to be a part of the discussion. So I guess so that the Attorney General wouldn't have to be there. We would have somebody to lean on for legal advice. That your bill 500 created that collaboration. What we have is not collaboration, and I need to commend you for sitting there, and I'm so glad that you've been in this body and not taking this personally, but you're the person that came. You're the representative from the folks. So don't take this personal. We're not frustrated with you. I'm frustrated with this bill. I'm frustrated with this process that is about to throw us into. And I thought we had a month and some change, but now we only got 2 weeks to really hash all of this out and figure out that's even less time for us to learn and know what these changes are going. And you keep saying changes, we moving stuff, but the stuff that's in the Constitution right now, it provides for 70 of us on the House side and 26 on the Senate side to say, yes, we want this constitutional amendment. Then we let these beautiful people vote on it, vote it up or down. If we move it into the statute, it's just a simple majority on both sides, and they don't know what changes we made unless the news decides that it's worthy enough to let them know. Or if we have a town hall that has enough participation for them to come out and get that information for us. So all of these so-called not changes are very concerning. But my first point was collaboration is something that we did not have. Just like I said in the criminal justice special session, Democrats didn't have a chance to participate in that because it was so narrowly written that any of the bills that we wanted to propose didn't fit within the narrowly tailored structure of that call. And with this, we still don't really have a chance to participate because the process is so short that we will not have a chance to really put in our changes and have them well thought out and to figure out what's being done, what we can do to fix what's there and have a true conversation as to what we're moving and how it's going to affect the state and the citizens that we all came here to represent. So we didn't have collaboration.
Thank you, Representative Newell. Representative Marcel.
Thank you. I think it's Article 8 for education, is it?
Correct.
It's in there. So would you consider moving the MFP out of the Constitution into statute, restructuring? Would you consider it as restructuring?
What I consider restructuring?
Yeah, you said it's. You keep saying that you're not changing anything. You're doing restructuring, right? That's
Correct.
what you keep saying. So I'm just listening to your words. Taking the MFP, which is now under Article 8, out of the Constitution and placing it in statute, would you consider that as restructuring?
That would be correct.
I'm sorry.
Correct. Like the example I use about my homeowners
No,
association.
not your homeowners. I want to talk about the MFP. That's all I want to talk about.
Any provision that's in there that the House, the Senate, and the delegates, with a vote of the people, decide should be taken out of the Constitution and moved into a statute would be restructuring, correct?
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So currently,
but I don't want to be on record suggesting that the MFP is coming out of the Constitution.
I didn't.
Because that's not. We're just having a general concept of what the definition of restructuring is.
Right. But I wanted to be specific as it relates to the MFP, because that's one of the things that give people angst in the community, that the MFP, if taken out of the Constitution, out of Article 8 and placed in statute, would you agree? Because you said something, and it sparked my my question to you. You said you filed this bill, whether it was a Democrat governor or a Republican governor, whether the majority was in the House. Would you agree, though, because you've been here, you was here for a while, that depending upon who's here, that the law could be changed at any time? If somebody does not want to fund education to that level, that could happen if we move it out of the Constitution and put it in the statute. That could absolutely happen in the instance now with the supermajority in the House. Would you agree that if there's a supermajority, the will of that supermajority could change whatever they wanted to change about it if it's not under the constitutional amendment laws of Article 8? Would you agree with that? You've been here. Come on, answer me.
Of course. If the legislature can change something with a 2/3 vote that doesn't require a vote of the people, then they can change something with a 2/3 vote without a vote of the people.
Okay, but something as important as health care, I'm going to use health care, that's protected as well.
Well, health care is not protected, which is one of the reasons I'm sitting here, is because health care would always get cut when there's a deficit.
Well, yeah, because they're the only ones that could be cut. But if you want to place that in the Constitution or vice versa, that would change that, right? It would depend upon...
Yeah, so because of the structural of our system, there are some things that are protected, there's some things that aren't protected.
But right now, MFP is protected.
Yeah, so because of these problems, I once had a bill to unprotect everything, so everything was on a level playing field. And when that failed, I came back the next year and tried to protect everything, so everything would be on the same playing field. So
you haven't been very successful, have you?
No, which is why I'm sitting on this side of the table.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we answered the question about the MFP, and when we move that it, you all are saying that that's restructuring. I think that's a major change. That's what I think it is, major.
Well,
but
and I'm not suggesting that there will be any change to MFP,
but it could. If we pass this this bill out of here, and we have a constitutional convention, that could happen because you just one vote, right?
If the House, the Senate, the delegates, and the vote of the people decide that the MFP should move from the Constitution to the statute, then yes, that could happen.
But again, it depends on the will of the House and the Senate. And right now, there's a supermajority for one side, and it could be changing when another governor come in. It could be a supermajority the other way. So the pendulum could swing, and the law could change as it relates to those things, right?
On any topic.
Yeah, if it's not protected.
If it's not protected.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Marcel. All right, the board's clear. We're going to take some testimony. So, members, just in lieu of time, we're going to have to move to. I'm going to make a motion that we move to adopt the 3-minute rule. Is there any objection to the adoption of the 3-minute rule? Hearing no objection, we're going to adopt that rule now. So, Ms. Secretary, if you kind of keep track of that for us. So, members, we've had testimony. We've taken public input over the last couple of days. We're going to continue to take that input today. We're going to prioritize those people just because if they're still here that have not spoken yet. We have a number of people who have spoken multiple times. So, we want to make sure those people who have not had their voice heard have the opportunity to do it. So a couple of cards. We're going to start with Mr. Daniel Erspamer here with Pelican. Oh, there we go. All right, Mr. Erspamer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, my name is Daniel Erspamer. I'm the CEO of the Pelican Institute for Public Policy. I know most of you, but for those I don't, the Pelican Institute is Louisiana's free market think tank. Our mission is to ensure that every person in Louisiana has the opportunity to flourish, to pursue the American dream, and to create a better life for themselves and their family. That's the lens through which we view all of our engagement in public policy. We're here in enthusiastic support of moving toward a constitutional convention. I'll be brief because I know you've heard all the arguments one way or another. I'll just say this. We're at a turning point in the state. We know the problems. We're on the bottom of every good list, the top of every bad list. We have one of the only states in the Sun Belt, in fact, the only state in the Sun Belt to be losing population. We're at a critical point where this legislature was sent to this building by voters to make some big decisions. I think that's what we've seen in polling. That's what we have seen as we traveled the state. I went to just about every corner of the state over the last year talking to civic groups and families and leaders in every community. And what we hear is big ideas. It's time for big change. And there's different ideas about what that means. And I think that's a good thing. Debate, discourse, getting in the weeds on these ideas and having competing and compelling visions is a good thing for the state. Robust debate, it's been interesting to listen today, is a good thing for our state. The convention allows this body to look at the Constitution holistically. It allows this body to say, this is the structure of government. The Pelican Institute has been engaged on research across the country to figure out what should a good constitution look like? What should a state constitution be? We've published that research and some recommendations that go along with it. Other organizations, PAR and others, have done amazing work evaluating our Constitution and making recommendations. What I heard from the debate today is there's broad commitment and consensus to constitutional change. The question seems to be at what time and in what format, and that's a fair debate to have. As I've listened to the debate, as we've engaged in it, we've been working on this issue at least for the last 5 years and really beyond that, but the last 5 in an intense way. You know, this is among the strongest proposals we've seen come forward. It is at a critical time. I understand the concern about the length, but this is a critical moment to make these decisions, and sometimes the calendar just works the way it is. This body is going to have, I'm confident, a robust and compelling debate about what this Constitution should look like. I've heard a lot of questions that seem to feel like there's some secrecy or something happening. I think that's the point of calling the debate, is so that everyone can have their voice, or calling the convention so that people can have their voice. I understand the transition committee will provide some recommendations as a starting point because, to Representative Newell's point, it's a big document. It's the second longest in the country. That's one of the challenges we're trying to fix. So I just come here to say thank you for your engagement in this, to encourage you to keep moving this forward, to support a constitutional convention and get in there and figure out what that vision looks like and how we ought to govern the state and how we ought to set up the structure of government. So, Mr. Chairman, members, I'm grateful for a few minutes to address this. The Pelican Institute is in full support, and we stand as a resource for anyone who wants to engage in these issues or debates, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Erspamer. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And he had a green card present in support and wanting to speak. We also have Mr. Carson Delarue with the Associated Builders and Contractors. Is Carson here?
Yeah.
Carson? He has a card in favor, wishing to speak. Mr. Delarue, the floor is yours. Please introduce yourself.
Morning, afternoon, Mr. Committee and committee members, excuse me. My name is Carson Delarue. I represent the Associated Builders and Contractors. The only thing that I really have to add is in reference to the committee members' concerns over the timeline and the public input, the inability for public input on this issue. frankly, the inability of the public to have input on issues in the Constitution is why we support the convention. Because right now you have all of these protections. You have very, very significant policy matters that really aren't up for debate. And so we would love to see a Constitution that simply provides the foundation for government and allows the legislative body to debate these policies on their merits in the legislative body, in open and fair debate. So that's really our position on it. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir, for being with us today. We also have President support like to speak. Mr. Jim Patterson with Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. Is Mr. Patterson in?
Yep.
Nope. Mr. Patterson, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Jim Patterson with the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. I don't want to take a whole lot more time than to just simply express the fact that the lobby has been very much invested in trying to bring about a constitutional convention. We were very much working with former Representative Abramson when he was attempting to do this. We understand there is a crying need to address a number of issues within our Constitution that are holding our state back. The simple fact of the matter is that there are a number of items in our Constitution that were placed there before many of you were born. Things that are outdated, things that are no longer necessary, things that are frankly problematic, as has been mentioned, to the legislature's ability to move our state in a positive direction. There will be an opportunity as a legislature to act on various articles of the Constitution and make a decision of what needs to remain and what needs to go, or at least needs to be considered as something that should go. And I do think that you as representatives of the people will get an opportunity to provide their voice in that regard. I do believe that the people will be very much informing you as you go along through your deliberations as a constitutional convention as to what it is that they are concerned about, as to what it is they would like to see addressed. So I think this is an excellent document. I want to express my appreciation to the chairman for bringing it and giving us an opportunity to go down this road. I ask you to continue the progress of this document to the floor. There will be naturally a continued discussion, and I would imagine a further amendment to the bill to make the Constitutional Convention what you want it to be as a body. So I commend that to you. Remember that there will be a 2/3 vote required, so it's not automatic. There is plenty of opportunity for further discussion. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson, being here. Also present in support, provide information if necessary, Ms. Debbie Hinton with the Police Jury Association of Louisiana. And we have a number of other cards here with us that are at present support but not wishing to speak. So we'll go on to some of the other cards. Let's see here. So one of them, I'll have to get you to fill out another card because I'm not sure if you're in favor or opposed. Mr. Christopher Toombs, if you wouldn't mind filling out another card, a green or a red card, depending on where you stand. Also present, not wishing to speak, but in support of Governor Jeff Landry, Mr. Lance Maxwell. All right, we'll start with some of the opposition here. Let's go with Alfreda Tillman Bester, present in opposition, would like to speak. And if Mr. Steve Gunn wants to come to the table, present in opposition wants to speak, if you want to come to the table at the same time, and we'll let her speak, and then you'll be next.
Former representative, by the way.
Okay. Welcome, former Representative Steve Gunn. All right.
Never lost election.
All right, Ms. Bester. Would you please introduce yourself for the record?
Yes, good morning. I'm Alfreda Tillman Bester, and I am a life member and a former general counsel for the Louisiana State Conference of the NAACP. I am Vice Chair of 10,000 Women Louisiana, and I am a member of the Board of Directors of Louisiana Progress. The thing that concerns me most about this proposed constitutional convention is that there are no rules of engagement. Nobody knows what anybody is supposed to do. The representatives don't know what they're supposed to do, and they're appointed by the governor to be delegates to this proposed constitutional convention. There's no draft document. What are we looking at? What are we supposed to have the people who are elected vote on? One of the first things I learned in law school was that once you reduce something to writing, you have to reduce it all to writing, or there's vagueness or some overbreath related to those particular items. Disclosure of who those persons who financed in support is something that would be required once the Constitutional Convention is convened. But what about those who paid to influence the process prior to the Constitutional Convention being convened? As a preliminary matter, there's a question of whether this legislative body, as it is currently configured, is even able to hold a constitutional convention, because it has been declared to be in violation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. People who say that we need a new constitution are the same people who are still introducing bills that will have to be voted on as constitutional amendments in the next election. This is absurd. I will agree that our Constitution is currently bloated, that it needs to be reformed, but I think that it needs to be done in a real constitutional convention, not in a conference, which is what you're proposing, a 3-week conference or a 2-week conference to talk about the foundational document of our state. This is an insult to the people of Louisiana, and I think that we can do a whole lot better, because what's the rush? We've talked about people who've been doing this for 22 years, and now all of a sudden we have to do it in 2 weeks. We can do better, Louisiana. We can do a lot better.
Thank you, Ms. Bester. Look, there's no clapping in the room, so thank y'all. Mr. Devin Davis is also present. Would like to speak in opposition. If you'd come up, and when Mr. Gunn is complete, you'll be next. So, Mr. Gunn, please introduce yourself for the record.
Okay, my name is Steve Gunn. It's more like what I was than what I am now. I was a legislator in the House. I passed Article 7, Section 2.1, which requires a 2/3 vote before a fee or a civil fine can be enacted or increased. And I suppose that's going to be sent to statutory purgatory. We don't know whether it's a constitutional amendment or a statute. Well, you know, if it requires a 2/3 vote, we can wipe out the homestead exemption. We can wipe out the gun laws. We can wipe the gun protection, the Second Amendment, whatever we have equivalent to it. We can wipe out the 2/3 requirement for taxes. We can wipe out the 2/3 requirements for tax exemption. We can wipe everything good in the Constitution out. Yeah. Everything that's there. And I don't want to see people like you be thrown out too. I want you to stay here. But I don't want to see the governor gone. I voted for him. I asked hundreds of people to vote for him. And I didn't even ask for a congressional district to be drawn for me. Jesus, how much more loyal can I be? And then this happens. You know, I go to Winfield sometimes. And it's about 27 miles north of Montgomery. And I go do my grocery shopping over there. I buy my ammo over there, my guns, all that. And I can tell you, Huey Long has a statue there. I go by there every day. when I go, and I say, hey, Mr. Huey, he doesn't say a word. About 100 times. And then I said, one time, I went by another day and said, hey, boy, come here. And I went over there, and he said, you got to go to Baton Rouge and straighten those people out. I said, well, how can I do that? I'm not even there anymore. I said, my goodness. And he said, well, I don't know how you ever passed that constitutional amendment. You didn't pass anything else. He said, you did kill all their pay raises 3 or 4 times. I wonder anybody voted for you. But every legislator, everyone there in the Senate, even the people that hated me voted for it because they knew it was right. They knew it was good for the state. It protected the people against excessive fees. They were raising fees then by just advertising them in the newspaper. What kind of government is that? Yeah, we need the old Constitution. That's the one we need. Because the people are protected now on fees and fines and other things. Like, in the Ukraine over there, in 1932, Stalin starved them all to death. 3 or 4 million people died. They practiced cannibalism. It was so horrible. And they'd go in their houses and say, look, you've got to get out. The state owns your house. You got 5 minutes to get out, and you got to throw them out in the dead of winter. And that's what we would do if we lose the Constitution, the homestead exemption.
Thank you, Mr. Gunn, for your testimony. The time is
I can tell you a lot more.
I know, and I'm enjoying the testimony, but
don't grieve. Listen to Steve.
Thank you for being
here. You're about done if you don't listen to Gunn.
All right.
I'm always good.
All right, well, all right, let's keep it down in the audience, Mr. Gunn. Let's keep it down in the audience. Let's keep moving here. Mr. Devin Davis is at the table, going to speak in opposition. At the same time, Ms. Caitlin Joshua, if you mind coming on up while Mr. Davis is speaking. Mr. Davis, floor is yours.
Good morning, committee. My name is Devin Davis. I'm so happy to finally be here for y'all. This is about the 3rd week that I've been having a nice prepared testimony ready to go, so y'all get to hear it. So today I'm here to express my profound concerns regarding House Bill 800, which proposes a constitutional convention to rewrite our state's constitution. First and foremost, the timeline proposed for this convention is alarmingly compressed. The bill schedules less than 2 months from the commencement of the convention to the submission of a new constitutional draft, which is nowhere near enough time for legislators to thoroughly vet these changes being brought forward. This accelerated timeline severely limits the depth and breadth of consideration, debate, and refinement for a new constitution. A constitution forms the bedrock of our legal and government system. It should be crafted with meticulous care, extensive expert consultation, and thorough deliberation. Rushing this process risks oversight and a potential for unintended consequences that could impact our state for generations to come. Moreover, while I appreciate the opportunity for public testimony such as this, they are insufficient to ensure that the voices of all people in our state are heard. Many residents, especially those from underrepresented and underserved communities around our state, cannot afford the time or the expenses to travel to Baton Rouge to participate in these hearings. Recall the efforts during the 1974 convention, which extended for another 2 years from the point that we are currently at in this process, as well as what we recently experienced with the redistricting roadshow, where we brought the discussion to the people, fostering broader engagement and a deeper understanding of what was attempting to be done. If the intention behind this convention is genuine transparency and inclusivity, then similar outreach efforts are imperative. We must proactively explain the process, gather feedback, and ensure every person in our state understands the changes being proposed and how they will affect their lives. Basing also on the 27 proposed delegates by our governor, I am also deeply troubled by the range of delegates that will be appointed to be key instruments in this process, which suggests a significant representation of corporate and special interests. This raises concerns about the potential for these entities to disproportionately influence the drafting process and imprint their own interests onto what should be a widely respected cornerstone of our governance. Lastly, as a representative of Louisiana's younger generation, I must stress the critical importance of including our voices in this process. This new Constitution will govern our lives far into the future, and decisions made now will lay down the rules we live by, the rights we will enjoy, and the duties that we will owe to our state and to our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. All right, Ms. Caitlin Joshua must not be here, so we'll go to Ms. Keisha Edwards. And if Caitlin Joshua's in the overflow room, they can come on up. Ms. Keisha Edwards, please introduce it for the record.
Hi, I'm Keisha Edwards. I'm the operations and membership organizer for Step Up Louisiana. I come here today to speak for the people of this state that you all may not have the opportunity to engage with because either they are less fortunate, either they can't vote, they can't read, they're formerly incarcerated, they have a disability, a handicap, or some kind of issue. I came here today because HB 800 troubles me in a lot of different ways. Today I heard, and every day that y'all have had this hearing, I've been up here and I've heard the words change, I've heard the words reform, and I've heard the words reorganize. And all those words mean change. When you look up the definition of reform, it says makes changes in something in order to improve it. So obviously, we are reforming our Constitution because it needs improvement. The next word was reorganize. Change the way in which something is organized. And all those words are similar to reconstruct, alter, adjust, rationalize, reconstruct, and rearrange. All those words means change. And so I believe that the issue that most people have with this bill is the untruths to say that there's no change when you're using the words that defines change. So if there is no change, then why are we using the words that define change, first of all? Second of all, Mr. Aberson is the one who is saying that he initiated this bill. He wrote this bill. He drafted it. He's been working on it since 2009. So in that bill, the articles was only going to be, and that's the bill I'm referring to from 2018, it was only going to be Articles 6, 7, and 8 that they were going to look at. Now you're talking about looking at the articles from 5 to 12. You're talking about putting, he and I had a conversation last week for about 30 or 40 minutes. So I'm very clear as to what the intent is, or what the intent's supposed to be. But like I said again, I think the issue is that so many people, it's unclear because when you talk about the words, when you talk about wordplay, you're really playing on a person's mental. And I don't think y'all understand what that means. We the people means we the people of this state. We the people of the United States. That's what the preamble of the United States Constitution says. We the people. You all were elected to represent the people. And so all I'm asking is that when you make your votes and when you make your decisions and when you have your conversations, don't think about the people only in your district, because this is a state and we have to work together as a collective. We have to collaborate with each other. I just ask you to think about we the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. All right, so you, Ms. Joshua?
Yes,
okay,
I am.
So great. Mr. Joshua is going to come up and next, Wesley Bishop will be on cue next. So if Mr. Bishop wants to come on up, Ms. Joshua, former Senator and Representative Wesley Bishop, come on up. Ms. Joshua, please introduce yourself for the record.
Of course. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Caitlin Joshua. I'm a resident of Southeast Louisiana, native of Baton Rouge. I'm a wife, a mother of 2, and my 5-year-old is in kindergarten and does attend public school in our great state of Louisiana. So HB 800 would certainly impact my family, my life, and her experience. HB 800 is an extremely alarming bill, and I'm here today to talk about why I oppose it. It is no secret that our public school systems are completely defunded or in need of funding and resources in this state. That's no new news to anyone in the room, but it has been repeatedly hard to accept that this legislative session, the strategy feels like there's a continued effort to defund all across our state since the start of session. HB 800 seeks to update or fully remove public school funding formula, or the MFP, from the state's constitution, thus making it easier to further reduce school funding. Additionally, the convention seeks to jeopardize the protection of the Louisiana Public Service Commission, the Board of Regents, the judiciary, and the revenue sharing between state and local municipalities. This disproportionately impacts majority Black communities and municipalities. What's worse is the special interest groups and big corporations who seek to benefit from the convention taking place and will have too much power during that session to be able to influence. Opening up these and other sections of these Constitution will create dangerous opportunities to reduce critical government or protect essential functions of the government by one party of the government. Again, I implore you to vote no on HB 800. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Joshua. Appreciate your testimony. Mr. Bishop, so look, I know you filled out a blue card. With these blue cards, and they're new to me, so we have to get a letter from the person you're representing in order for you to be able to speak on their behalf. So just, if you don't mind, present this as your testimony, and we'll get you to fill out a red card.
Well, actually, I've been here the last 3 weeks. I've done the exact same thing.
Okay.
Along with being a former state representative, state senator, I serve as a staff member for City Councilman Oliver Thomas. That's why I'm here today.
All right. So just,
I'll check it out.
Yep. So just thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I have had the good fortune to serve on this particular body, on this particular committee, as well as serving as a state senator, and in that capacity. But today I'm here on behalf of City Councilman Oliver Thomas in the city of New Orleans, and we have watched issues in this particular body this session very, very clearly, because the city of New Orleans seems to be a target of many of the issues that actually come up. I'm not speaking of that as it relates to this particular bill, but there are several things that are here that are of major concern. And let me just say this. In January of 2011, I was elected to this body. 2 weeks later, this committee did a road show, came to Dillard University, because we were in the process of determining exactly how we were going to determine who was actually going to be elected. Then, I guess, former president of the Louisiana State System, former president of Grambling State University, happened to be a state senator, and that was Rick Gallo. And they came in, the whole purpose was to hear from the citizens of New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Alexandria, Lafayette, the entire state of Louisiana, to see exactly what was actually going on. To deal with an issue as serious as the Constitution, to rush through an issue dealing with the Constitution as quickly as it is a fatal flaw. I think most folks on this committee would agree that reform is both needed and necessary. I think I heard Representative Boyd say that earlier, and that most individuals are a part of that. I want to commend Rep. Boyd, Rep. Newell, Rep. Marcel, Rep. Lyons, and Ms. Larverdane for bringing up some issues that I think are extremely critical. I know this body pretty decently. I follow politics pretty decently. Throw out parties. Throw out race, throw out sex. The citizens of the state of Louisiana don't want us to rush through a process whereby we're throwing out the Constitution in a way in which I think that we're actually doing it. I know that time is of the essence. I'll make one additional statement. When we take a look at it, the citizens want both input and they want information. And I think that to try and rush through this particular process in such a way that's being proposed, I think is a disservice to the citizens of the state of Louisiana. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop, and welcome to the House. And if maybe just to help going forward, if you could get something before you testify before the committees, just give it to the staff and let them know that you're authorized to represent the council. So thank you. Yeah, a letter from the council. Thank you. All right. So we have some people who are here who have presented before who would like to speak again. So, Ms. Germany, we'll start with you.
Thank you very much. First, good afternoon to everyone, the chairman and members of the board, members of the House on Government Affairs. My name is Jacqueline Germany, and I'm a member of East Baton Rouge Parish of District 61 and Representative Denise Marcel's district. It is the community where I live, work, and highly active and believe in speaking up and speaking out.
I have sit here, I've read, I've listened, and I've heard. What is happening with this bill, I'm completely opposed to. I'm opposed to it because me, as a citizen, as a voter, is not given the opportunity to participate, to take part in what the structure and composition of this bill is. You know, for far too long, things have been happening, and happening in this chamber and in these hearings, where we the people are not looked at. What we want and what we believe is divided along party lines, because the Republican committee and the Senate are both led by the Republicans. And every vote that I've seen thus far has been along party lines. So what's going to change with trying to swiftly move something through a committee that's not going to give the voters and the citizens an opportunity to be a part of it? First, it was 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Now you want to move it to May 20th through June 3rd. That's not giving it an opportunity for anything to be done efficiently and correctly. I have deviated because Louisiana is at a crossroad. It's time for a change. It's time to look at what the people want and what the people need. Thank you very much for listening to me and giving me an opportunity to come before you to say to you that I am completely in oppose of this bill passing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Germany. All right. Ms. Tanya Nyman, present in opposition, would like to speak again? Ms. Tanya? Oh, there you go. And up next is going to be Ms. Marianne Mushat after Ms. Nyman.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I actually came equipped with handouts today, but I didn't understand all the rules in order to give them to the committee, so I'll try to catch you guys later with it. I'm here. I'm a resident of East Baton Rouge Parish, and I'm asking you to oppose House Bill 800. In order to be successful, constitutional conventions require a mandate from citizens. The 2023 election results, only 52% of approximately 36% of voters does not constitute a mandate. However, if you decide to move forward with this, I do want to raise awareness about an injustice that exists in Article 7, Section 18 of the Louisiana Constitution, which delineates that commercial property can only be assessed at 15% of fair market value for property tax millages, which are established by the parish, not the state. Our state constitution effectively ensures that 85% of the fair market value of every petrochemical plant in the state is protected from property taxes. Delineating the assessment in the state constitution prohibits parishes from tailoring their tax structure in a way that makes sense for their unique circumstances, and it's antithetical to the expressed conservative ideals of local control. Taxing the fair market value rather than the state-mandated 15% assessment value would allow incremental increases in property tax millages to significantly increase property tax revenue. So I'm using East Baton Rouge Parish as my example since that's where I live, and it also affords us a really significant demonstration of how powerful this could be. I think we have about 24 petrochemical plants in this parish, but for my example here, I'm just going to target the top 10 property taxpayers in the parish. And you can find that list in the City of Baton Rouge Parish of East Baton Rouge 2022 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, Exhibit G9, page 246. So in the fair market value of those 10 facilities is $5,541,063,900. But since the assessment value is in that Article 7, Section 18, we can only tax 15% of that, which means that we only get to tax $83,115,958. If we switch to being able to tax the fair market value instead of this state-mandated assessed value, incremental increases to the property tax millage would dramatically increase the revenue for the parish. So, for example, right now we're effectively garnering 1.5% of the fair market value of those properties, and so that's $83 million in property taxes. If we could increase it to 1.75%, that would be 96, almost $100 million in property tax revenue, which would be an increase of nearly $14 million. 2%, $110 million. So we'd have an increase of $27 million. If we get up to the same rate that the public facilities are, we would have an increase of $55 million in property tax and could get rid of our general sales tax. I sure wish y'all had that 30-second warning most committees had.
Thank you, Ms. Nyman. And look, just as the next person comes, just to let you know, I'm making some notes on this Article 7, and I would encourage you when it gets to ways and means to voice your, because that's something that could be moved to statute. So thank you.
Every opportunity to raise awareness. Thank you very much.
All right, Ms.
Mushat.
Ms. Mushat. I don't know why the Mushat. With Boye, I get it slaughtered all the time, so I apologize. And Ms. Eva Williams is also, if you want to approach after Ms. Mushat, and you'll be next in the queue. Please introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Mary Ann Mushat. I live in New Orleans, and my concerns over HB 800 is the ability to revise the state constitution. But my concerns are twofold. One is time, and the other is transparency. I don't believe even AI could evaluate and consolidate the lengthy Constitution in now 2 weeks, at least not one that will meet the needs of today and tomorrow. I request that HB 800 evolves into a study request, giving you all the time and us the time to address the complex current and future challenges of Louisiana. The issues demand this consideration, and you legislators whose reputations will rise or fall on the adaptability and ability of the new Constitution to meet the needs of a thriving democracy here in Louisiana. And you deserve the time. And we citizens of Louisiana, the present and future, demand this consideration. So I'm asking you to either defer this bill or convert it to a study request to give this weighty effort its due. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Mushat. Ms. Eva Williams, please introduce yourself for the record, and Ms. Melissa Flournoy will be testifying again. So, Ms. Williams.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Eva Williams. I'm a resident of Baker, Louisiana, and as a voter in this state, I oppose rewriting of the Constitution that will cut funding for our school system. We need to support the school system in every possible way. HB 80 doesn't seek to find a solution around the lack of funding for schools, but instead could weather away what's left of that funding. I would like to see you all put effort and energy around a hold of government approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. We appreciate you being with us today.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Melissa Flournoy, the board chair of 10,000 Women and a former legislator. And thank you for allowing me to testify again regarding House Bill 800. As you know, a constitutional convention is really the most consequential act of government in order to redraw, redefine, and create a constitution that will stand the test of time. The last constitution was passed in 1974. It went into effect on January January 1st of 1975, and it really incorporated a multi-year program for review, research, analysis, and public transparency. This legislation is the most consequential of your career. You're putting your reputation on the line as you move forward with a rushed convention that will have lasting impact. We ask that you slow down, turn this into a study resolution, or even further narrow the scope. The amendments today essentially eliminated concerns for any review of Article 1, 2, 3, and 4. It does leave the following sections of the Constitution open for revision, change, and elimination. Currently, there are 40 constitutional amendments that have been provided in this legislative session. If you open Section 5 of the Constitution, you can make the Supreme Court positions appointed by the governor. You can change the number of people in the Supreme Court. You can severely restructure our judicial system. If you look at the local government section in Article 6, you can change the homestead exemption. If you go into Article 7, you can address all the designated funds, limitations on use of the state general fund, and further look at the regulatory and fiscal process. If you look in the public service section, Article 10, you can choose to eliminate civil service. You can choose, there's a constitutional amendment about changing the selection of college boards and college universities and the selection of folks that serve at the pleasure of the governor. Frankly, 2 weeks is not sufficient to address these serious concerns. You know, our concern basically is that a new constitution has already been rewritten, that has not been presented to the public, and this process is literally a sham. To review the level of constitutional issues over the last 50 years that merit your concern, we ask you to slow down, do an effective job, plan seriously for all the constitutional issues that require consideration, develop a process that you can be proud of, and a process that will stand the test of time and serve the next generation. Please be careful in the steps you make and the intended and unintended consequences of your efforts today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flournoy.
Just one moment, members. Just one moment. Chairman Boyer at the table.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Thank you, members, for allowing me this opportunity to close on this important bill. there are always reasons why we shouldn't have the convention. As former Representative Abramson was talking earlier, he's attempted this many a times. Representative Wright, who had a conflict today, who's not with us today, but he's also made attempts at this as well. We can always think of a bunch of different reasons why we shouldn't have it. A lot of times it boils down to the delegates, and that is an issue that has come up over the years. And so the discussion on those delegates in the past is if we had reelected them like in the past, there'd be special interest that would be involved in those different elections. Well, we're doing it differently this time. And we're having you all serve as the delegates. All of us serve as the delegates. And again, one of the arguments is that special interests can control us. And I disagree with that. So that's one of the issues that's continuously been brought up. Another issue is the timing. And that's happened in the past and why it's never been right for the state to do it. And I would argue that the timing is perfect and the timing is absolute if we're going to make bold changes in the state of Louisiana. And the issue of the timing as it relates to this session and as it relates to this convention, we could not have the convention right now. All right? We could wait and do it in the fall and have the next legislative session go on with unknown whether or not that constitution would pass on the ballot. We could come into this next summer, the same thing we're proposing now, and be stuck with the same time constraints, but we don't have a statewide election. So, this testimony about not having enough public input, enough percentage of folks that are going out to the polls. Without a statewide election, if we call an election, that's going to be a very low turnout election calendar. So we fast forward 2 years from now, and we have another statewide election. We could do it at that time, but we're still under the same time constraints that we are in today, and the Secretary of State still needs that by August 1st. So I get it. I hear all the reasons why not, but I also understand the importance of the reason on why we need this. The governor, we have a new governor who's wanting to make bold changes in Louisiana, and he set up a transition team to look at this convention and have us look seriously at the way our Constitution is drafted. And the delegates or the transition team didn't disagree. You heard that in testimony. They didn't agree at first. It took them a while before they came to agreement to where we are today. So disagreement is fine, and we've heard a lot of arguments on both sides of it. But one of the arguments that I'm gonna disagree with, and we heard it often, is that the people of Louisiana don't have a voice. They do have a voice. They have a voice. They've 105 of you and 39 senators is who they have a voice from. They've also had a voice. We've taken a lot of public input. We've had people who disagreed with this bill who we even saw a second ago, who have ideas on how we move forward and change the Constitution, even right after they were disagreeing on the bill. So I think we do have that voice, and we've had a lot of testimony to speak of that, and we're going to continue to have that voice. And that's why we've established the procedure for going through this committee structure, to continue to give the people of Louisiana a voice and receive this public input. Vice Chairman Lyons, would you just do me a favor and hold up the stack of red cards? It's a large stack of people who have come out, and that's part of the stack. That's just today's stack. So these are people who have been in opposition to the bill, and so we're hearing their voices, and I get it. There's just some disagreement there on the need for having this Constitution. One of the things that we need to realize is, and we've had the discussions about it, and we've seen it in the amendments, is that this bill narrowly tailors the debate of the convention. And so a lot of the unknowns can be addressed in this bill as we move forward. And this bill will be amended to narrowly tailor it, the same way we amended in here. And as we go to these committees of jurisdiction, within the existing legislative structure, we'll be able to make recommendations and have amendments to this bill to exclude certain things. So the fear tactics that the homestead exemption is going to be pulled out and the MFP is going to be pulled out, when those committees meet, their recommendations may be, which I would think the homestead exemption would stay in it. That's my thought. If not, the people of Louisiana probably wouldn't support the bill. So there's things like that that are used as scare tactics. And again, it's all the reasons why not. And it's really the fear of the unknown. And I get it, but we can create the known with this bill as it goes through the process. Next year, we have a fiscal cliff that we're hitting. $500 million is what it's looking like. If we proceed as it is without this convention and we don't give ourselves the ability to do a comprehensive tax reform, we have a $500 million deficit that's going to be placed on the back of health care and higher education. And that's concerning. I wasn't in the legislature when the last debate came on, when they added the full cent and then the 0.45, where we were kicking Granny out the nursing homes and we were going to not have LSU football. But those debates were real. If we don't address something, it's coming out of higher ed and healthcare. It's that simple. And I think those items are too important to the state of Louisiana. The items that we move into statute will be in statute. I mean, that's been very clear with us. So we're assuming the people of Louisiana would vote for this Constitution and find it favorable. The day after it passes, it's still status quo within this building and within the governing of the state of Louisiana. We are going to have items in place to where they use the term super statutes, but to where there's a higher threshold of vote to remove those things from the statute if they were previously in the Constitution, to give some peace of mind that there won't be this sudden and knee-jerk change, but it would be part and be allowed to be part of a comprehensive reform such as the tax reform. So members, we've heard a lot of good debate on this, and I want you to realize, in my mind, as much as folks think the timing is not right, I think it's crucial for Louisiana. It's important to the state, it's important to all of our people back home that we make these difficult decisions. It's not an easy decision, it's a very difficult decision. And we allow ourselves to make bold changes for the state of Louisiana, or we'll keep getting the same results that we've been getting year after year, and actually even generation after generation. So members, I encourage you to vote favorably for this bill, and I'm going to make a motion that we move the bill forward with amendments.
Okay, members, Chairman Boyer has made a motion that we move House Bill 800 as amended favorable. Is there any objections? Objection by Representative Boyd. Ms. Baker, would you call the roll, please?
It was Newell.
Boyd. It was Boyd. It's Boyd. Ms. Baker, would you call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Chairman Boyer?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Bayham?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Billings?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Boyd? No. Representative Carter? Representative Domain?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Farnham?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Gadberry? Yes. Representative Larverdane? No. Vice Chair Lyons? No. Representative Marcel? No. Representative Newell?
No.
No. Representative Shammerhorn?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Thomas?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Wright? Representative Weibel? Yes. There are 9 yeas and 5 nays.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Thank you, committee members. And I assure you we'll continue this discussion, and we'll have some healthy debates and discussions in regards to this convention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.